to GTO Step 7. This is my absolute favorite of the GTO steps because it's all about implementation. As an implementation scientist, this is my passion and my absolute favorite step. We are going to take that plan we've developed in GTO Step 6 and now implement it and monitor implementation. So our focus in this video is going to be on how you can monitor implementation to know if you are doing it well or if changes are needed. Before we get there though, there is a comment I want to make on the importance of implementation. So there is no shortage of good ideas out there in the world. You all, as leaders in healthcare and healthcare changes and researchers, are probably inundated with good ideas all of the time. But there's a big difference between the good ideas that get to outcomes and the good ideas that fall short. And the difference is largely in the quality of implementation. Because if we want to get to outcomes, we need a good idea and we need to implement it well. Now, we also need to evaluate it and a couple of other things, but at its core, you need a good idea and you need to implement it well. So the question is, how do you know if you're implementing something well? How could we target this? Because we don't want to implement something and then 3 years from now realize we didn't get to outcomes because we simply weren't implementing it right. How could we, in the moment, know if we're doing a good enough job? Are we doing sufficiently well so that we will get to outcomes? How well, what is the quality of implementation? This is a process evaluation. When we move a process evaluation forward and actually use that data to improve, we sometimes call it a formative evaluation. That's a little jargon. It's probably not necessary right now, but just in case I slipped one of those words and I wanted to clearly note that we're talking about a process evaluation or a formative evaluation here. So, what do you want to monitor when you're doing a process evaluation, and when do you want to monitor it? So in terms of what we want to monitor, we typically advocate for monitoring 6 different things. They are fidelity, dosage, reach, responsiveness and acceptability, adaptations, and differentiation. I'm now going to go through each one of these briefly. I will say before we dive deep that Hung Tu and the Implementation Outcomes Measures team has validated scales put together for the prioritized areas here, and we have a plan for measuring each of these. So the expectation here is to get a conceptual understanding of what each of these areas are, and we'll be able to generalize it to TA later. But for now, I just really want to give you a basic understanding of the types of things you could look at to understand if implementation is going well. So the first is fidelity. Fidelity is defined as the adherence to the original program design. So in terms of evidence-based intervention, there's a protocol put together that folks are supposed to follow. Well, how well are you following it? Are you doing what you're supposed to do to get to the outcomes that you intended? If you do what the original program developers did, you are more likely to get to the results they got to. If you deviate from that, then you might not get to the same results. As we go down this list, when we hit on adaptation, we'll talk about how to know if your deviations are good quality deviations or not good quality deviations. But for now, just keep in mind that you want to adhere to what you're supposed to do. You want to adhere to what we know works, and you want to show fidelity to that. This fidelity issue, however, is also true related to your plan. So it's, when we think about fidelity, we often think about fidelity to the program itself, which is critically important, but it's also adherence and fidelity to your plan. So if you remember that in GTO Step 6, we talked about things like hiring and administrative support and I'm drawing a blank, recruitment of participants, right? We talked about those big buckets. So if you recognized in the planning process that you needed to hire, say, 10 new employees, and you didn't adhere to that plan, you didn't follow your plan, and you didn't hire any, well, you're going to really struggle with adherence to the program itself because you don't have enough staff. And so I encourage you to think about fidelity broadly. Think about your plan that you wrote down in GTO Step 6 and follow along in a real-time way to making sure that all of those deadlines, all of those timelines are being reached. Because a small miss-up in one of those tasks could lead to a big fidelity concern down the road. Forgetting to hire people because you weren't adhering to your plan could really mess up the way that you're able to do the evidence-based intervention in the future. So fidelity is adherence to your original plan and the original program design. Next, we have dosage. This is how much of the intervention do people receive? And when we think about how much, we think about two dimensions: how often, the frequency, and how long, the duration. So your program could look a lot of different ways. You could have a care manager going out every single day for only 5 minutes and doing physical activity. Or they could go out once a month and stay for 3 hours. Those are two totally different pictures of programs, right? So how much of the program did you get? I want to make a comment related to fidelity and dosage that is sometimes confusing with people. So fidelity is, did you do what you were supposed to do when you got there? So let's say you have a physical activity intervention, we have a PA protocol for this project, and you have your care managers going out. When they went out there, did they do what they said they were going to do? Maybe they went out every single day for an hour and did what they were supposed to do. That would be high fidelity and high dosage. Maybe they went out every single day, high dosage, but they ate lunch with people, low fidelity. Maybe they went out once every 6 months, low dosage, but they did exactly what they were supposed to do, high fidelity. So these two things work together. You want high fidelity and high dosage, but sometimes implementation could get weak by one of the dimensions. And if you only measure fidelity, you're missing dosage. And if you only measure dosage, you're missing fidelity. So it's important to measure both of those. Reach refers to the degree to which the whole target population, so in this case, elders with dementia, received the intervention. So are we getting all elders with dementia in this PA protocol? Or maybe we're missing some. Maybe we're missing people in rural contexts. Maybe we're missing people with really severe dementia who are hospitalized. Maybe we're missing a particular demographic of elders with dementia that we mean to be intervening with, but for some reason our recruitment strategies or our just rollout plan is not satisfactory for one particular subpopulation. So reach measures, do we have representation from everybody in our target population? Are we reaching the people we think we're reaching? The next two kind of go together. One is responsiveness and one is acceptability. This is how people respond to your program. Their satisfaction, how much they like it. So responsiveness refers to how participants respond. What's their engagement with the program? Are they sort of like, if a care manager is showing up to people's houses, are they hiding behind the door and saying, I'm not home? Or are they enthusiastically greeting them and ready to participate in the physical activity protocol? Acceptability is how the health workers themselves liked the intervention. So did the health workers, were they enthusiastic about doing it? Are they ready to get out there and intervene? Or are they like, I don't really want to do this, I would rather do another intervention overall? So this is how people respond to the intervention from the participant's perspective and the healthcare worker's perspective. Then we have adaptations. We talked about this in GTO Step 4, but it's coming up here. If adaptations are needed to your plan, so let's say you were supposed to hire 10 new employees, but you could only hire 5 and there just were no other good candidates out there, then make an adaptation to your plan. Make an adjustment in their workload. Make an informed decision about what you're going to do about that problem, and then track it using data. It's okay to make adaptations to plans. It's okay to make adaptations to programs. You could go back and watch the video on GTO steps 3, 4, and 5 to refresh your memory about green, yellow, and red light adaptations, and learn about how you can make different adaptations. Adaptations are okay, but they need to be systematically planned, they need to be monitored, and they need to be evaluated. Use data to inform your adaptations. Use data and talk to people and really understand the consequences and implications of making these adaptations. Most of the time, or often, I guess I'll say, adaptations strengthen implementation. They strengthen acceptability, they strengthen responsiveness because you're making it more applicable to the context you're in. But it could only be that way if it's done systematically and evaluated. So I'm emphasizing that point. Collect data, make sure adaptations are working, and if you're doing it proactively and systematically, there's no problem with making adaptations. You just have to know what you're doing. And then last, differentiation refers to the extent to which the intervention represented a change in treatment as usual. So if the care managers are going out and they're doing this new thing, but they're not really doing anything different than what they used to do, you're not going to see big results. Really, you need to change if you want to get results that are different than the results you've always gotten, you need to do things that are different. And so differentiation is just the extent to which this represents something new. So again, these are the different dimensions that we look at when we think about when we're evaluating the effectiveness of implementation. Stated differently, these are the domains we look at when we want to know if implementation is going well. Do you have good quality implementation? Well, look at the fidelity, the dosage, the reach, the responsiveness, adaptations, or the degree of adaptations and how well they're being tracked, and differentiation. So when should you collect this data? Well, we encourage, earlier in this video, I talked about process evaluations and formative evaluations, and we really encourage a formative approach to evaluation. So we should be collecting this type of data in an ongoing way, because when you do that, when you have this ongoing data collection, you could look at that data at any time and say, this isn't working, this is an area that's not working well, let's make a change. It allows for mid-course corrections. It allows for improvement in the moment. There's no real reason to implement something, collect process evaluation data, and not look at that data for 3 years down the road until you look at outcomes, and then you could say, oh, well, I know why we didn't get to outcomes, because we didn't implement it well. Well, if we had that data, why didn't we use it in the moment? Why didn't we use it to improve? We could have used it to improve so that we didn't 3 years down the road see no results. We could use the data we have available to us at any given moment to improve and improve and improve so we get to the outcomes we want to see. So we encourage ongoing data collection and regular reviewing of the data amongst your implementation team to see if there's any changes that are needed that you could systematically plan for, that you could build into the process so that you're more likely to reach the results that you want to receive. This is a preview for the future, but there are ways to improve implementation. Specifically, everything we just spoke about, all of those measures we just talked about, fall within this implementation outcomes bucket. These are the implementation outcomes for the project. We talked about fidelity, dosage, adaptations, reach, responsiveness, acceptability, so on and so forth. Those are all of our implementation outcomes. And as I said at the beginning of this video, Hung Tu and team have developed an implementation outcomes hub where we have all of these measures in place that we'll be doing it for the PRISM project. We also have clinical outcomes. This is how the elders, the change, this is the desired outcomes we wanted to see. This is, do they have less mental decline using our intervention? So we want to say that if we implemented something well, we were more likely to get to clinical outcomes. But the question is, well, how could we implement things well? What if we're not implementing well? What if we're implementing horribly? What do we do about that? Well, we know from implementation science that there are 3 reasons why implementation may not be going well. You might not have the general capacity, the overall functioning of your organization to do this well. You might not have the specific capacities to do the PA protocol, or you might not have the motivation. These are very specific things that we can work on and build so that you implement better, you implement with quality. We call this readiness, and it is module 2.